Sam, so happy that we found this time, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining. For the audience, I think you need no introduction. You are the OG in cybersecurity, but maybe say a few words. All the major companies that
Oh my goodness.
you've touched. Fine.
Well,
Well,
first of all,
we're
thanks
short
for
for
having
time.
me.
Just
I'll say,
short
so
version.
short version, McAfee Computer Associates. I was at RSA, EMC, Arbor Networks, most recently Cyber Reason, also at MicroStrategy for a while. I'm at Zscaler now. So but thanks. I always love when people call me the OG or something like that. It's always fun, but it's good to be here.
It's true, right? It's true. It's
been a long time. Yeah.
You've been around, you've seen things, right?
You have too,
great.
by the way.
So just a few threads that I really want to kind of to get your opinion on. One is, it seems like everyone is acquiring everyone. It used to be there was an acquisition every month. Now then it's every other week. Now it's two a day. It's Bionic acquired by CrowdStrike, and then Splunk acquired by Cisco. Do you think is it driven? Is it just the economy and companies realize they used to be valued at VC projections, and now they want to be valued at private equity projections, and they're kind of running to a little bit of a wall, and they're looking for the white knight? Or maybe both? Or is it more driven by CISOs not wanting to deal with 50 vendors and looking at 50 dashboards?
Well, look, I think there are cycles to this, and I think it's probably fairly obvious that that's the case. We go through hype cycles, for lack of a better term. It's almost like the old Kondratiev waves, if you remember those from economics. So we went through massive, call it overvaluation, but where the emphasis was on growth at all costs. And we talk in investment circles of the rule of 40 or rule of 30 or the rule of whatever, where basically, even though they're different units, that growth plus margin adds up to 40. But let's be clear, a company that is emphasizing growth over margin, let's say 50% growth and negative 10% margin to hit the rule of 40, which would be a good company, is structured very differently from one that is, say, 15% growth, right, and 25% margin. That's just a totally different beast. So it's not like it's a seesaw or a set of switches that you can just move. And if you're in one mode and almost overcommitted to growth, it is painful to correct that. All the people are in the wrong positions, for instance. And so you get layoffs. And what's amazing is cyber can be important, and you can have a talent gap, and you can be doing layoffs. All three of those things can be true. And what you wind up with is companies that were the darlings headed for IPOs that now are going, so I still want that huge exit. How do I get it? And something like half of our industry now is owned by PE. That's quite a remarkable number. We still have this long tail of small companies. So there's corrections that happen at the bottom of these waves, of these curves, and it will come back up. But also the attention of the markets now has moved on to things like the next buzzword, AI. And so what is cybersecurity doing? They're trying to attach AI to everything. It's not just a logical marketing thing to do. It's also an investment thing to do. So I think this is a natural part of the cycle, and this too shall pass. So we're going to go up, we're going to go down, we're going to see it repeat. So I don't want to make it seem like this is unusual. It may be the waves feel like, as with Kondratiev waves, every time they pass the period, or rather the amplitude got bigger, right? So the waves seem to get bigger and more significant every time, because they are getting larger. But beyond that, it's business as usual. So I think what we're going to see is the ones we thought were untouchable in that phase, the darlings, some of them will continue to succeed and some of them will fail. And I think that'll take the world a little bit alarmingly. And that also means that people will take the exit strategies, and that some assets are available at a bargain, at a discount right now. And anyone who's not in one of these modes, investing for the next upswing, or looking to acquire, or trying to find opportunities, they're not acting smart.
Well, it's interesting. It's to your point, if the company is set up for growth, the skill set from founders down, and resources and infrastructure is geared for growth. And it's all kind of predicated on money being available for the next round or an IPO. And if it's like you're jumping over.
Yeah, it's less about, it's funny. I went to RSA conference and other conferences, And I heard people going, in these times and money's scarce. And I'm like, actually, no. I've never known when people went, hey, you know what? Money's plentiful right now, right? And no one's ever said that. No one's like, the budgets are the same. They continue to grow in roughly the same way. Unless a sector or a particular customer is having trouble in changing the budget, cyber is still in demand and still a growing sector. Like that's just true. But the way money is moving is slightly different, and the nuances involved, like you can't just grow indefinitely, especially not at overinflated rates. This correction had to happen. And so, when people are too heavily piled into, for instance, the go-to-market arm, and it's getting larger and larger and larger, at some point you got to go, you can't do that. And these things correct. And that's unfortunate, but these things do correct. They do come around. But the industry is still a healthy industry, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, it's just, again, what value you're attaching to assets and how do you value companies? And it's a sliding scale. And
well, the valuations seem to be tumbling for some. Others are still rising. But it's quite shocking to those who are, shall we say, not as steeped in the industry. And if people want to know, how do I, if I've got an asset or I'm looking at an asset as an investment, what do I look at as past behavior to try to figure out what's going to happen in the future? And the best thing to do is not just to look at the immediate history, it's to go back to the last cycles. And so you look at the people in the last cycles and you look at the trends in the last cycles. Those are the best indicators, because it's almost like same time last cycle, right? Who were the folks that placed the bets that won, and who were the folks that knew how to handle a company in these situations? What were the kinds of assets that made sense? I made the same comment about, all the hype about AI. We're asking the same questions about AI. Things like, is my data going to be private? Is my IP going to be under control? Who can see it? As we used to ask about cloud, and we used to ask about search, and we used to ask about instant messaging. And it's now settling into, oh, okay, so now this is how I absorb it, and this is how I use it. And it's actually similar kind of answers are emerging. So it's the same thing on the economic side with respect to our market.
Interesting. Well, obviously, you mentioned that cybersecurity is still growing, healthy industry, and I think as a result, on the one hand, a lot more people are looking to make a career in it, and and everyone's complaining there's a shortage of talent. And I know you've provided your opinion and your insights on how to address that, and that people with skill sets that at the first glance may not be suitable for cybersecurity actually would be very successful if they chose to do so. I'm just wondering if we can unpack a little bit of that. And then on the flip side, we're also hearing that CISOs who are searching for the new chapter in their career and then looking for a new position, they're finding that the market is tighter and then it takes longer to find a job. So I'm just trying to reconcile kind of the two, maybe just stage specific or career or stage specific answer, because on the one hand, apparently there's like insatiable demand for cybersecurity talent. On the other hand, we see maybe more senior executives are finding a little bit tougher time to find quickly the new opportunity. How do you think about reconciling those two?
There's a few things. First of all, I think the reason there's continuing demand for cyber, and it can't continue to grow indefinitely, just like markets can, is that we have an opponent who's constantly adapting, unlike other markets. Therefore, innovation is a force that resists commoditization. Commoditization is what you get when something is available everywhere with the same quality everywhere. It's what happens to any market unless innovation actually differentiates, as opposed to price being the point of differentiation. So that's the first thing I would say. And the second is, now this is an important point, because a lot of folks who think they can understand the market in cybersecurity think it's going to commoditize, and then they're surprised when it doesn't, or it doesn't fully consolidate. Consolidation trends don't continue. And there's always this long tail of smaller companies coming up and disrupting. And that's the reason. The day that we actually find a way to get ahead of the bad guys will be a wonderful day, but it will also herald the day where we'll start to see what happens in other markets happen here. And so folks that are novices coming in from finance and management into the cybersecurity market, they get blindsided by that. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second is CISOs very often burn out because the biggest problem in security is the gap between cyber and the business. They're not truly seen as business people first. And those that are really successful and last in their job for a long time have bridged that gap in their current jobs. And so, you know, they when they go to a new place, they have to reproduce that Herculean effort to bring that together. They're not just hobbyists over a tech stack, as they're seen often by their business counterparts. Instead, they are business people first that understand the tech and can put it in context of all the other requirements. Do you get a new salesperson? Do you do a new marketing program? Do you open a new office, or do you buy a new piece of tech in cyber? The person who can put those in context and make a relative judgment is incredibly valuable, because that's an important dimension of any modern business that is currently separated from the boardroom conversations. But that's incredibly difficult to do in a new company. And once you've you don't know what you know once you become an expert in something. And so once you've done that in company A, sometimes you forget how you did it and what around you is supporting you. You sort of take it for granted because it's part of your DNA of how you do things. So you go to the new company and you have to build it again, and you can burn out in the new company. And those, by the way, who haven't successfully done it, they fantasize about leaving. Either they potentially become, addicted to something, it's very unhealthy lifestyles and high burnout rates and addiction rates in cyber at the senior levels. Because to get there, you have to be this super cyber person, and then you have to be a business person all of a sudden, in a way that really wasn't emphasized until the end of your career so far, towards more recent years. And so you fantasize about leaving, you fantasize about going to another company, right? You hear a lot of people who actually very short tenures, and then they exit and go somewhere else. They go off and raise coffee, or they become a carpenter. And there's people who do that. I think there's tremendous waste at the top around that. But your other point, there's so much that you asked about. The other point that you made was around transferable skill sets. And I think our industry is very arcane, and I mean arcane, right? I don't mean magical. I mean it is almost secret. It's very understandable, but there's a lot of stuff to know. And so people have inherently transferable attitudes and base skill sets that they could pick this up and be very productive, but we don't open the door very wide, and we don't make it very inviting. And we don't really have paths for them to come to it. And I think we could do a lot more there. So I think on one hand, we've got to make sure that as people get to the top of the career, they don't burn out, leave, or go become carpenters. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's a waste from our perspective with all that skill set, right? We're not making the most of it. And on the other hand, we've got to make sure that we can bring more people in, because then the gap, we won't have a leaky bucket. We won't have people leaving at the best part of their career where they can add the most value to the whole company. And we'll have a steady flow of hopefully diverse talent who's bringing new experiences.
Funnel on the other side. Yeah.
Right. And in the ideal world, not only would we get ahead of the opponent, we would also be much more closely aligned to the business. That's the goal. And actually, it's funny, we spend all of our time talking about the first, beating the bad guy, which my personal mission is about too, right? Trying to get ahead of. But really, the biggest obstacle to it is that we're not aligning to the business. And I put the onus on us to do that. We've got to learn the business more than
I think it's very insightful. And what would you recommend CISO? I mean, it's hiring a career coach, or having conversation with a CEO or the board, just explaining this is what's going to happen. And because what would you recommend CISOs that are kind of getting to the table? How do you, what
Friends, it's about like, have peers who give you honest feedback and direct feedback that you're going to listen to. Have a personal board, just like a company would have a board, right? So if you know you have deficiencies in some areas, find people that you're going to say, hey, you're on my personal board, just as if I was a company, to give me guidance. And you've got to exercise. Look, I hate the term soft skills, right? We have hard skills and soft skills. I prefer the term power skills, because they're the secret to success, right? If you ever wonder why highly competent, sometimes technical people don't excel within businesses, it's precisely the power skills that they're lacking. It's how to do presentations and how to cogently describe something. It's the writing skills, it's the empathy, it's the management. Things that we take for granted are actually the superpowers that help us to organize large groups of people to success and bring people along. Leadership is different from management. Management is organizing and controlling and getting things to happen. Leadership is getting a group of people to point in a direction and try to achieve something. And the best leaders do it without having to issue any instructions.
Mm-hmm.
Very little guidance, and people can make their own decisions on the way there. That's power. That's leadership. And so developing those skills, that's what they need to work on.
Well, what was the saying? It's don't teach them to build the boat, teach them to yearn the vastness of the sea, right? So it's
that I love. I'm going to steal that, by the way.
it's not me. I actually have,
I'll find out who said it. I'll steal it, and I'll credit you with having told me.
Sounds good. Sam, I know we're coming up on time. I just want to double click before we wrap up on one thing that you said about the burnout. I think the burnout is real, and I think partially it has to do with just the nature of the job. It's CISOs fight bad guys in the dark, and it's the outcome is nothing is really happening. Everyone is this organization is secure, everything is going on as planned. It's like let's say if a chief revenue officer hits the goal, overshoots the revenue target, high fives, pat on the shoulder, here's the bonus, here's the promotion, here's more stock options. What does success look like for a CISO? The organization is secure, all systems running as planned. And then the CFO comes knocking, hey, we spent so much on cybersecurity, nothing really ever happens. Like, what can we cut? So what? Yeah. Is it a communication issue? Like, is it as an industry? Is it just as CISOs need to wear business hat more often and be more comfortable sitting on this chair and wearing the business hat? Is it also on the cybersecurity community to educate the boards, to educate the CEOs that, look, what happened in Las Vegas with MGM and Caesars, it happened with us. It happened to us. And a social engineering attack, it's very low lift. It's very inexpensive. It can happen. Like the catastrophic events, that's what we're trying to avoid. So when everyone is smooth sailing, nothing is really happening. That's because we are doing a good job, because we get pinged 10,000 times, people searching for open ports, people probing our vendor network. This is just the APTs. It's not teenagers and hoodies anymore. It's well-resourced, well-funded, state-sponsored organizations with HR departments and budgeting and planning and segregation of duties. That's what we're up against. So is it on cybersecurity community to educate the business side of the business of the organization? What's really out there?
So I actually, first of all, become the chief storytelling officer to some degree. Right? You've got to have analogies. I'll give you an analogy. It's like health. Right now, you could say that you have to exercise and eat well because you want to avoid a heart attack, but you could also say so that you have new opportunities and you live longer and you can sleep better and you live better and you're better with your family and your life quality of life is better. All that's true. It's the same thing with cyber. So yeah, you do cyber to avoid an attack, but you also do it to enable new business. You also do it so that you are more healthy in your business relations with others. So there's an analogy, just pull out of thin air. So you have to do that. The second thing is, instead of just talking risk, and everybody expects us to turn up and use the word risk and to talk about vulnerabilities and to talk about port scans. Don't, by the way, don't. I've made that mistake many, many times. Don't leap on cyber when it comes up at the board level. Instead, let other people at the C level have a taste of it and try to ruminate on it so it becomes something they think about. They don't have to use the language we've used for 30 years, right? They need to develop a way to speak about cyber in their way with you present so that you guide the conversation. Then leap on everything that's not cyber to show that you give a damn about it. And there are 6 things that you should always be paying attention to: revenue, margin, yes, risk, but also operational risk, financial risk, legal risk, right? There's other forms of risk. And most CISOs do not pay attention to it. And you know what? You want the legal guys' support, and you want the CFO's support. You want these people to be like, you know what? You care about other risks than just IT risk. Then there's customer satisfaction and experience. There's employee efficiency. And then there's strategy. You got to be present for all 6, not just risk. So my advice is actually learn the language of the business. And one of the best friends you can make is you can go to the CFO who thinks we buy toys. That's what they think we do. They think sales buys, they spend money on expensive salespeople, but they bring in money right now. And marketing runs expensive programs, and I think they generate something most of the time in this thing called brand. And developers need always more engineers, right? It's Scotty and Star Trek in the engineering room. I need more, right? But what does cyber want? They want more toys, and they're not wrong. We spend a lot of money on controls, and so what you should do is say, why are we buying them, and then work with them to get trade-offs when you renew. Most CISOs are not using everything at their disposal to push price down on what is being commoditized in cyber, and to place bets, short-term bets, to test things high up that really provide value and that are highly iterative and adaptive. Right? Most of our budget is what's called statutory, meaning you don't have control over it. And what you want to do is reduce that, and you want to increase the discretionary budget so that you can test things and work with the CFO on that. He or she is going to be like delighted to have a conversation about how to make efficiency apply in your budget as a cyber person. They don't have those conversations with us. Instead, we turn up and go, well, there's so many port scans and firewall rules, and we stop this many viruses. That's a fail.
Interesting. So it kind of goes back to being more of a business leader, not just the.
It's exactly what it is. And to know your business and to be in your business, and to continue the health analogy, it's very difficult to say how healthy you are unless you take metrics over time and you value the improvement. How's my blood sugar coming? How's my blood pressure coming? How is my liver function going? And these are not done as with sales. We hit the number, we exceeded the number, we missed the number. Like, you don't get that visceral dopamine release and party. You get it over the long term, right? We're the 2 marshmallows tomorrow, not 1 marshmallow today team, right?
Yeah, I remember that study. I think it was predictive of success. How kids can delay gratification, and those who can will go further ahead.
And those who can delay gratification, they go into cyber.
Great, Sam. This was amazing. I would love to do this again. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Where can people find you? What's the best way to?
Best way is connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always open to connection, and then we can figure out what to do after that.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.